Hello, everyone. We are back after a long hiatus. I am ready to start making videos again. My studio was acting as an Amazon warehouse, and I had a lot of furniture in here preparing for some house closings, moving stuff. Anyway, we're back, and today I want to talk to you about the topic of creating $100,000 in passive income through real estate. There's going to be a couple different ways that we can do this, and it's going to be different for everyone. So I'm going to go through a couple different scenarios. One where you have a little bit more time, but you don't have a whole lot of cash. One where you're kind of on the hybrid, and then a last scenario where you have a ton of cash to play with, and you don't have any time to work on your investments. So you just need something completely passive now. Depending on where you're at, you're gonna fall into one of these three categories, and hopefully this helps you get started on your real estate journey or dive deeper into it. First strategy I want to talk about today is going to be in the scenario that you have a lot of time on your hands, but you don't have a whole lot of money, and really you can't afford to buy your passive income. So it's got to be a little less passive, and you got to put in a little bit of hustle and sweat equity. There's a couple ways you can do this. The first way is going to be a little less knowledge intensive, and that's going to be through house hacking. What that is buying either a single family home or a multifamily home and renting out the space that you don't use. So one of the things I did when I got started with my real estate journey is when I bought my first house, I rented out the spare bedrooms, and that allowed me to collect a couple $100s a month as opposed to paying for my mortgage or paying rent somewhere else. That skyrocketed my savings ability, and from there I was able to really put the burners on and get into a more passive, higher end scenario. A lot of people don't want to share the space in a single family, and they want their own residence, and I totally get that. And if that's the case, then the best bet for you is going to be to get into a multifamily home, which is a house that's split into 2, 3, 4, or even more units. And in that case, you live in one of the units, and you aim for some of the smaller, you aim to rent out some of the other units. Ideally, you're going to want to live in the smaller unit if you're comfortable with that, and rent out the bigger unit or rent out the other remaining units that you have, because the name of the game is use as little of what you're owning as possible for yourself and rent out as much as possible to everyone else, because in that event you're just more likely to come up with more money and make the most use out of the things that you're not using. House hacking is definitely one of the easier ways to get in and get started, and I know what you're thinking.
Well, I still need to buy the house. I still need to put 20% down. I don't have tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. Houses are too expensive where I live.
All right, first of all, cut the excuses. I don't want to hear why you can't get into a house. I want you to be asking, how can I do this? What is the best way? What am I going to do? I know I can do it. Well, the trick is you can put a lot less than 20% down on your first property. No one is just sitting there ripe with cash on their first one and ready to dive in. A lot of people either work really hard to save it up, and there's nothing wrong with that in putting 20% down. But if you're itching to get into real estate and you think that's going to take you forever, you can get in with 3 to 5% down. If you're looking at like the average price house of $250,000, you're going to get into that house for around $10,000 in total when you factor in all your closing costs and your down payment. That's something that you can and anyone can strive for. Now, if you're tired of hearing me talk about house hacking, because I talk about it all the time because it's super efficient, then what you should be looking at instead, if you want to go a different route, is called the BRRR method. What BRRR stands for is buy, rehab / renovate, rent it, refinance, and repeat. It's not that you're cold. It is getting cold outside now, though. I did notice that the past couple days has been horrible. But instead, it's not about the temperature or the weather. It's about just buying, renovating, renting, refinancing. And the idea behind that is that you're gonna buy this place with borrowed money. And where are you gonna get this money? You get a type of loan that allows you to buy the house and renovate it all in one. There's a couple of conditions that have to be there. You have to be getting a good deal. The bank's gonna underwrite the deal and make sure that you're buying something that's gonna work out in the end. and that's the only way you're going to be able to keep cash out of the deal yourself. That you buy it and then you're just paying the loan throughout on the construction process. And as difficult as this sounds, I think it's a great learning experience. It's going to be tougher for you if this is the very first one that you're doing, to get in and figure all this stuff out without any prior knowledge. But step one is going to be find the lender, find a property so that you have the funds lined up, you pull the trigger on the property, and go from there to go into the next steps with BRRRR, and that's the renovations. So far you're gonna need a lending contact, you're gonna need potentially a real estate contact or a good realtor, to help you find the right house to do this with. And then once you've done that, you've got your target property, the next thing you're gonna do is renovate it. So you're gonna need a good team of contractors. That's something that I like to keep a Rolodex of, and you should definitely have these people and have these conversations done before you get into any loans or financing, so that you have all your ducks in a row. But after you rehab the place, you've made this place super nice, the next step in the process is to rent it out. And after you rent it out, here's the cool part. Yes, you're collecting rent, whatever, but you can now refinance it, which means you take that loan that you initially got, that, remember, the bank paid for, you were just paying costs throughout to service the loan. And you're gonna end up taking some cash out from what you put in on some of the renovations that you paid for. And now, hopefully at this point, you don't have any cash left in the deal and you can keep a couple $100s a month. For me personally, especially at this point that I'm at, I'm not very interested in this strategy because I don't want to do all of that work and find the property and renovate, rehab everything, and collect a couple $100s a month. However, because it's very cash limited in how much you have to do to get in, you may as well go for this strategy if you have a lot of time on your hands and don't have a lot of money, because you're leveraging other people's money to build your real estate portfolio. And that's kind of what you need to do when you start if you don't have a whole lot of cash and you don't have many ways to come up with it. But on the other hand, you could just get into a house hack for $10,000, $15,000 or less. I got into a $375,000 house on my first one for $15,000 down, and I couldn't be happier with the path that led me down. So it's definitely possible to get into real estate and stay passive and get into rentals once you've done some of the initial grunt work with lower amounts of money. Now, if you're trying to generate passive income and you don't have as much time, but you do have some money because you've been working hard and you're pushing and focusing on your career, I'll get into that next. And this is where it gets really exciting to play around in, because the numbers get a little bit bigger. Bigger is always better, faster, stronger. So let's get into it. Let's talk about scenario 3. In scenario 3, you have more cash than you know what to do with. You don't have any time at all because you're so goal-oriented, or you just don't want to be involved in this stuff, right? When you're at that point, what it comes down to is you can start buying these A and B neighborhoods where the tenants are not going to be a problem at all. And it's just really easy to move and rent the units. Your cash flow won't be as crazy, but it sounds like you're already pretty well financially off. And something to really consider is how involved you want to be. You only have so much time. How much cash you're making per door is important. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up in real estate, is every little thing takes time out of your day. You only have 24 hours. If you're going to try to own 100 houses that make you $100 a month, or would you rather own 10 houses that make you $1,000 a month? It might be a lot more expensive to get those 10 houses, sure, but it sounds like we're already at that point. So why would you want the headache of 100 houses and want to be a slumlord when you can have 10 really nice houses that you rent out to 10 really nice people, and it's not going to take up too much time out of your day? Because at the end of the day, time is more valuable than anything. Well, if you are in this boat and you have all this money and don't have any time, I would again recommend going into maybe not so much the student rental market, but you can still go into the long-term rental market and short-term rental market and try to find some nicer places that don't require as much renovation, because you don't want to be involved in that. You just want to get something that's rent ready, ready to go. It's what we call turnkey. And if I had that situation, I would just be buying turnkey things, try to get them ready to go as soon as possible, find tenants as soon as possible, have a property manager find the tenants for me as soon as possible. So that way I just kind of pick the house that I like and get it, make sure that the returns are where I need it to be, and move on to the next thing. Because the goal is to stay passive, stay out of it, and build a cash flowing portfolio. And if you do that the right way, then you can just focus on finding the next good deal when you feel like it, or even have people bring deals to you, and it'll just keep churning itself. So you have a lot of options. You have a lot of different places to go. I'll touch up a little bit on what kind of returns I would settle for at the least, and get into one more thing yet today. It's called a syndication deal for my next level of investors. And without further ado, we'll get into it. You're in the boat of, I've been working hard for years at my job. I have a lot of cash sitting aside that I'm not sure what to do with. I've been playing in the stock market. It's been going well, but I'm not really sure what to do with what I have, and I want to get into real estate. Where do I go? What do I start with? What would you invest in? Well, for me personally, there's a couple markets that I would say to arbitrage. If now you're getting into real estate, but you have some cash, and your goal is to eventually create $100,000 of passive income and not have to work at your job anymore, how cool would that be, right? How great would it be not to have a 9-to-5 anymore? I don't know. We are all dreaming, right? So let's get to that point. Let's figure out how to do that. And what I would say is your best bet for this is going to be attack the student rental market, especially right now. It just got killed. It's still getting killed. A lot of students aren't in school. COVID has really made an impact on that market, but maybe you can find a seller who's looking to offload something, and you can just kind of hang on to the place for a little bit longer, bite some of the bullet, and then just get a great deal in the meantime that you can maybe eat for the next year and then benefit supremely for the next lifetime after that. Student rental market is where I would attack. Otherwise, I would probably look at a short-term rental and try to get a property manager on there so that you're not too time intensive, and it can be totally passive for you, but you can reap the advantages that the short-term rental market has to offer, especially right now. Even though COVID has really changed travel up, I know we've all thought about, hey, I work from home, I work remote, why can't I just work from anywhere? Maybe I'll just go to a different city and stay there. That's definitely been happening in the marketplace, and you can take advantage of that. Get somewhere nice, get a condo or a nice apartment unit, or even a house somewhere that people might want to travel to and spend some time in and learn a new city. Definitely doable here in Philadelphia. That's another route I might take. But again, you want to stay passive. You don't want to put your time into it, so you'd want to get a good property manager on that. Same with the student rentals. Everyone is going to tell you students are a headache. Students are students. You were a student, I would think, and you know what that life's like. So I get what you want to be afraid of in some part, but you can just put a property manager on that as well. And those are the two markets that I would go for. If I had a decent chunk of change saved up to put the 15 to 20% down on an investment property and wanted to really start going for something that cash flows, because we're looking to create $100,000 in passive income. If you're going for that super nice house that you want to live in and you're trying to rent it out, and you think you're in love with the house, but now you want to rent it out, those houses don't always rent for that much in terms of cash flow. Yeah, it's going to bring in a higher dollar amount maybe, but if you're aiming for cash flow, you want to go in kind of the tougher waters and get into the student rental market, get into the short-term rental market, go where the cash flow is high. It's about what they're going to be paying. It's not about what you would pay for it. It's not about any of those other factors. Something that I like to keep in mind when I speak to people about what neighborhoods you should target, you probably want to go for B or C neighborhoods. A being a fantastic neighborhood, the nicest place of all time. D, F being total war zones, you do not want to be there. In Philadelphia, for example, West Philly, where all the riots have been happening, sorry to throw you under the bus, that's a war zone. There are other places like Kensington that are drug-ridden and are just a mess that are kind of more or less a war zone. You don't want to go there. I don't want to be there for anything. Can these places change? Sure. Is that what we're trying to do in this video? No. We are trying to figure out where we can cash flow. An A neighborhood in Philadelphia would be something like Rittenhouse Square, a lot of places in Center City, maybe Fairmount. Those neighborhoods are very highly desirable. That's where everyone wants to live for the most part. If all costs were the same, that's where you'd want to go. Well, guess what? All costs are not the same, and that's why prices are higher in those neighborhoods. You're gonna have to pay a whole lot more. Everyone wants to be there, super competitive, and you're not gonna be able to rent it for as much. The tenants are easier to deal with. It's just, you're not gonna get that same arbitrage leverage that you have if you kind of find the sweet spot. And that's where I like to target. My target demographic is the B, C neighborhoods, ones that have a good chance at coming up and being that next A neighborhood, next B neighborhood. You're comfortable living there, you're comfortable going there. It's not anything to write home about and brag to your mother, wow, my neighborhood's so cool. But at the same time, your neighborhood is kind of hipster and it's fun to be in, and that's where you kind of want your rentals, right? Because the money will go there. People will go there and travel. There's cool things to do, places to go out, but maybe not every house is picture perfect. Not every house is $1 million, but you found some diamonds in the rough in a neighborhood that's up and coming, and that's where you're going to want to target. I prefer to go for nicer houses in these neighborhoods, depending on your strategy. If you want to buy something that you're going to renovate and bring it up, that's totally a great idea. You can help be part of the change in the neighborhood. But as far as what I would go for if I had a decent chunk saved, I would go into student rentals or short-term rentals in B or C neighborhood.